Hello everyone, this is The Last Word and I'm Maria Shakil. There was some good news for BJP MP and actor-producer Kangana Ranaut today. The Film Certification Board told the Bombay High Court that it was ready to issue a release certificate for a film emergency, but with some cuts. The film was slated for a September 6th release, but the censor certificate, remember, didn't come through, even though the board had earlier given a green signal to the film. Members of the Sikh community objected to their depiction in the film, terming it malicious. This forced the censor board to send the film to a review committee, resulting in the delay. This isn't the first time that there have been run-ins between film producers, directors, and the censor board over a possible go-ahead certificate, especially films related to the emergency. Today on the show, we decode the fine line between certification and censorship. Joining me on the show, Dilip Tahil is a film actor. We have Tara Deshpande, actor, writer. Mamta Kale is a former member of CBFC, and Meghna Pant is an author. Dilip Tahil, beginning with you, of course, she will have to accept those cuts and then only the film will be released. But the larger question is, are we assuming that our audience is not intelligent enough to make that distinction between what is a depiction of an event, which obviously is full of artistic liberties, and an actual event?
Well, a very good evening to you, and thank you for having me on your show. It's always wonderful to be with NDTV. I have been consistent in my view and my stand that there is no place for censorship. I have never supported it. I, in fact, think it's a contradiction in terms. We call ourselves a robust and a vibrant democracy. So that's a contradiction in terms. I think it should be a symbol of our democracy that we do not have censorship, that we allow self-expression, and we certainly do not, interfere with people's expression in the arts, and whether it's films or painting. And there's so much certification these days. Anything you see says strong language. You just add this is politically sensitive, if you like. I think this is probably a policy that has come down sadly from the time of independence, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like something that was being imposed upon the Indians at the time of the independence struggle, which is understandable from that point of view. But I mean, I certainly don't think that there's any place for censorship. As you quite rightly said, I mean, usually it's the cine-going audience that are not really perturbed or troubled about these situations. And I think it does insult their intelligence by assuming that you have the right to tell them to see or not see what, a sort of a body people put together. Don't get me wrong, I have all respect for the individuals who sit on the censor board. I think they're very qualified and they have the best of intentions, but they just seem to be in the wrong job.
All right. Meghna, the Bombay High Court had said clearly that the CBFC cannot sit on the fence and it has to take a decision. The fact is that it has gone ahead and taken a decision, but the larger question is also of sensitive content. There is that responsibility also of the filmmaker. And in this particular case, you had the Shrimani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee actually sending a legal notice to film producers.
Right. Maria, it's all very muddled, isn't it? But yes. I'm speaking to you as an artist who, like almost any other artist in the country today, believes in freedom of speech, but responsible freedom of speech. Because I believe very strongly that freedom of expression must not supersede freedom to life. And, we live in very sensitive times. And as artists, we are usually aware creatures. We are aware of what's going on around us, even if we don't pass opinions on each and every issue. We know what's going on. So I always tell my artist friends that you cannot expect prejudice, but it's also wise not to expect privilege. And I think the only logical way to bridge this widening gap is to make this sort of universal law that cuts across, mediums and religion, caste, and faith. And censorship should therefore be made uniform. So, the contours of free speech, of creative freedom. I think it's time now that we strictly and narrowly define them. So this sort of tussle between the art and the censor, which is, by the way, age-old, it's been going on through centuries.
Absolutely.
Does not divide the country. We have to look at responsible freedom of speech for the artists, but also a defining factor of what works for India today and what doesn't, because preemptive action is important today. Because remember, we are a nation of such rich storytelling history. We have such beautiful tales emanating from all parts of India. They should come forward. Art is meant to be transformative. Art is meant to be disruptive. But art must also provoke thought. It should not evoke anger. And I think that's where we're also going wrong as artists. We know the sensitive environment, so let's be respectful towards other people. And on the other side, the law of the land should also make sure to unify the country, and therefore laws should be dictated clearly so that there's no tussle. And, there's a sort of solution, a practical solution where everybody wins. So this tussle doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, because, and we are seeing more of this tussle because of how sharp the political lines stand today. Tara and Mamta, welcome to this show. Mamta, coming to you, do you think there is a need to perhaps revisit the principles or the guidelines on which these certificates are issued?
Yeah, good evening, Maria. Thank you for having me on your show. I have been a member of CBFC for 4 long years, and
Yes.
all I want to tell you is that, CBFC works under strict rules and regulations. So the day I got my appointment letter as a CBFC member, I had a huge, you can say, rule book also,
Yes.
reaching to me, and I had to go through it. So I have certified a lot of movies, documentaries, ads, and songs. And we have, it's a one jury committee, 2, 3, and so on. So when you're sitting and viewing a movie or anything, as a CBFC member, you have a huge responsibility on your shoulders. And you need to really work under those guidelines, parameters which have been given to you. As far as I am concerned, I feel that there are rules, and they do change them. There are modifications which happen within the CBFC. But having said that, let me come back to emergency. And I just want to say that Kangana has co-produced this movie. She's acted in this movie, and she's a director of this movie. And it is a dark history of our country, emergency. And it is a fact which needs to be told to everyone. But having said that, I also know that what CBFC had stated today in the Mumbai court, that they are more than willing to give this certificate to emergency. Only thing is that they have the revision committee have suggested few cuts. So I don't know what the cuts are. That is between the CBFC, the revised committee, and the makers of the film. So one has to see that there has been a lot of representation as far as this movie is concerned, and therefore the movie was sent to a revision committee. So
Yes,
when a movie is released, you have to see that there is no law and order problem in any part of our country.
That exactly is my next question to Tara Deshpande. The concerns of public order, and of course, films which have clearly different versions of history, and that's largely to do with the political nature of our country, get caught in this crossfire of sorts. But the question that I wish to ask you, Tara Deshpande, public order was one of the reasons, that the film should not affect public order, that there should be no law and order situation. Shouldn't that be left to the government of the day, or should the CBFC take a call on those lines?
Well, the very basis of the Cinematographic Act of 1952 is public safety. I mean, this act was put into place as a balance and check against freedom of expression, Article 15. So in a sense, the job of the censor board is to make sure that whatever goes out to the public is actually safe for consumption, Now, what safe means we can sit and debate. But there are many laws that the censor board has to keep in mind, whether it's cruelty to animals, an Act of 1961, whether it's denigrating women, whether it's outraging the modesty of women, etc., etc. But one of the things that we do know is that India can be a tinderbox, you know.
Yes.
It can be a powder keg that can explode if you're not careful. And we, of course, want to maintain public safety at all costs. Now, art is not homogeneous, just like life, and art is essentially an expression of life, the life that has happened or the life that may happen. So no two films can be uniform. So it's very difficult to have laws or to have guidelines that will perfectly fit. You know, there's no cookie cutter law for art as such. But the important thing also to remember in the case of Kangana is that film is also a business. And every minute that this film gets delayed, it can be financially catastrophic for the people who are making it. It's one thing that you're passionate about it, that you're very, involved with it, and you want to put out this version of your telling of the events to people. But at the end of the day, there is also the business side to this. Films are a business. Again, public safety comes first, no doubt. But your interpretation of history and mine could be very different, and that's where we collide or clash. You know, if the facts are wrong, if Nixon really didn't say this, if Winston Churchill cannot be blamed for the famine of Bengal, those are facts. But the censor board right now, in the current polarized environment that we're living in, has a very difficult job, much more difficult than it was 20 years ago, because information is disseminated at the speed of light in social media, then it's regurgitated, and 5 minutes later, everyone's opinions have changed about something.
Ms. Deshman,
so the censor board can right now say, oh...
Those 21 months have been the darkest chapter in Indian politics and Indian history. There is consensus on that.
Yes.
There is no debate per se. The only debate is that why is it being spoken about when, the Congress party has apologized? And why is this being given the color that it is being given? My question then is, because I was going through what are the objections which have been raised. It has been spoken about that in the trailer, there are several anti-Sikh scenes, perhaps, and deeply hurt the sentiments of a community. Do you think filmmakers have to be mindful to not enrage sentiments?
Well, that's very difficult to judge because, first and foremost, yes, Emergency was a very dark chapter, but we've had darker chapters. We've had The Partition, and we have made innumerable films on partition. So because it's a dark chapter, I don't think we can avoid making a film on it, for starters.
Yes.
And I haven't seen these scenes, so I can't really give you an opinion on the scenes themselves. But what I can say is that I think where you can have common ground is facts. If something wasn't said, if something wasn't done, then it's a no-brainer. But the question, the difficulties that arises, something did happen, but it is so sensitive right now. It is going to enrage people right now. We shouldn't do it. We should maintain public safety, which, as I said, is the basis of the censor board. But at the same time, where does that leave you and freedom of expression? If we don't want to say difficult things, if we don't want to tell difficult stories, what are we here for? If we're always, varnishing the truth and sort of infantilizing our public, where does that leave us? That takes us back 20 years rather than forward 20 years. And look at the content on streaming today.
Yes.
I mean, the content is incendiary, what you're watching, whether it's sexually very forward, whether it's, the abusive language that the censor board would never have passed even 10 years ago.
Yes.
So things have really changed in India.
Yes. So, Dilip Tahil, the same argument that perhaps if the same film would have been released on OTT, most people would not have objected to it because they are so used to the nature of content on OTT and there's no censorship per se. It's about self-censorship.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Not just OTT, but I mean the very premise of what we're talking about is that who are the custodians for this? You should see this and you should not see that. I completely disagree with that. The very premise that I am saying is let the audience be the custodians. Who is the censor board, or why do they have the moral right to sit and tell a country of billions of people what they should or should not see, what is a sensitive part of Indian history. And like the lady said, there are so many incidents in Indian history that have been sensitive. That is the whole idea of creativity, so that we have to be able to see it from a point of view, from different perspectives. And sometimes they are provocative, but that is what the arts are about. And I think the audience is very much, absolutely don't need any spoon feeding to say that you should see this or you shouldn't see that, or this is a sensitive place. Let the audience be the custodians of their emotion and their decisions. Why do you have a censor board telling people what to do and what to see? The entire premise is false. The entire premise is on a weak foundation, and I challenge that in its first place.
So
and you're right about OTT. Most of the time, the
Mr.
viewers
are you
would
of the
not
opinion
even be
there should not be any CBFC
perturbed
at
by
all?
some of the things that the censors bring it up. I say there should be certification. You see a film as is, I said, Mr. Shan Benegal also proposed this in the Rajya Sabha, that it should be the Central Board of Film Certification. So you tell the audience what they're going to be seeing. That's your job. Excuse me, your job is not law and order. Your job is not trying to create or prevent a law and order situation. That is not the job of the CBFC. Your job is to indicate to the audience with the certification what they might be, what they're going to see. And let them decide. End of story.
Yes, and you know, Mamta, this is the same question that CBFC faces, you know, almost like 5 to 6 times a year, because there's one or the other film which gets into this debate of censorship. And it's always that charge that does it act arbitrarily?
Maria, I completely disagree with the you know, a thought that there should not be a censor CBFC. It is Central Board of Film Certification. It is not censor board. CBFC doesn't censor anything. They only issue a certificate, UAA, and so on, based on the content of the film. Now, you know, it is very easy to come out on a TV channel and say that who is CBFC to decide what people should be seeing, what they shouldn't be seeing. Yeah, it is their choice. And, you know, I also believe in freedom of speech, and I want this movie to get released because I'm eagerly waiting to watch Emergency. But having said that, you know, what if CBFC gives a certificate, the movie gets released, and then there is a law and order problem in some state, let's say in Punjab. Then the same people will turn around and point finger at CBFC and say, why didn't you do your job properly?
Okay, let's have Dilip Tahil and Mamta
why did you issue a certificate to this movie? So this is what happens. We all have gone through this.
That's not your responsibility.
Which I had
you just
rejected was taken to the court, and then the court said that the decision of the member is absolutely correct. So it is not, you know, it is very easy to come out and say, you know, these guys do nothing. No, it is not like that. One has to sit there, watch the movie very carefully, and then issue a certificate. I am also saying this, that it is important to make such movies. I also want the younger generation and everybody to watch Emergency. What had happened in 1975 is a serious issue. But if CBFC is saying, you know, make some cuts and thereafter we'll give you the certificate, and you are, you know, more than welcome to release
Tara,
the movie.
you wanted to come in.
Itni si baat hai.
No, that is precisely.
Yeah, I don't think any of us
saying that you're a board of certification and you're not a censor board, and then you're saying we're putting cuts. If you give cuts in a movie, you're a censor board. You're not just a board of certification. You have proposed certain cuts. That means you're a censor board. Please, the difference.
No, if CBFC was a censor board, they would have simply made made the cuts. They are suggesting the cuts, sir. CBFC is suggesting the cuts. They are requesting the makers.
Suggesting.
Please have these cuts. Please make these changes. So there is a huge difference in censorship.
No, Dalip, if I may intervene.
Yeah, but who is? Please understand.
Dalip, I agree with you.
Completely said that unless you put these cuts, we will not release the film, or the film release is subject to these cuts. So you may be putting it politely, but you're putting it quite firmly that you will not release the film until the cuts are implemented. So that's a censor board.
No, none of us, neither you nor I have seen.
You're not a board of censor.
You're not
just a board of certification.
I think it is between
board.
the makers and the CBFC to decide.
Okay, Tara, you wanted to make a point. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Dalip is correct in saying that if you're making cuts and you won't certify a film unless these cuts are made, you are censoring content. On the other hand, no one at any point has ever said that the censor board is not doing its job or that the censor board is, obsolete. No, absolutely not. In fact, as I said earlier, it has a much tougher and more important job today than it did 20 years ago because things are very different. Now, there are compromises that can be made. I mean, you can release a film with cuts in a cinema hall and you can release the unedited version on OTT. It's been done in the past before. It's not something that filmmakers enjoy because we put our lives into these films and we have a particular point of view, but we also understand that public safety is very important. So there are compromises that can be made. But if they are, and of course, this film deals with a very disputatious, very egregious, very controversial part of our history. So deciding what is going to, inflame people is very difficult to do. But at the same time, you have to understand that this has been going on for decades where you are almost held to ransom that, oh, we will burn this building down if you release the film as it is. Oh, we will picket this cinema hall if you don't make these cuts. Oh, we will burn this or we will kill this one if this film is released like this. This is ridiculous. This is nothing short of blackmail. I mean, I do understand that the sentiments of people are important, but there's what are sentiments? Your sentiment may not be my sentiment, may not be that person's sentiment. So we have to have some
that is not the job of the CBFC. Yeah. They're not custodians of law and order.
Dalit, they are not custodians of maintaining law and order, but if you look at the Cinematographic Act of 52, its main goal is public safety, Dalit.
Absolutely.
As per the law, as per constitutional law, its main job is public safety.
Who said that a film... Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm going to have a look at it.
Who said that a film's main goal is public safety? A film's goal is expression expressing your view and making a movie with whatever your self-expression is or the perception that you have on an incident.
This is no argument.
This is for law.
Right.
That's not.
You're absolutely right that our job isn't public safety when we make a movie.
All right, I think I have just enough time for Meghna Pant for her final comment, who has been listening to this entire discussion very, very patiently.
I'll just sum it up for everybody. I think the larger problem is that unlike, say, China, the definition of what is right and what is wrong in India is not explicitly stated.
Yes.
So, its interpretation is left wide open and you can see the results of that. I think therein lies the moral dilemma that even a surgeon and a terrorist both kill, one without intention and the other with. So who's deciding which one to label a murderer? So who's deciding intent? Who decides what is deliberate or malicious and who decides what is objectionable? And I think any sensible liberal person will never ask for a film to be censored, but even they will question the motive of the film. Is it to reform or is it to offend? So how do we even begin to decode art, right? So I think the underlying message...
But films are not about reform or offend.
Messages overtly, then don't spread the
This is not a documentary.
And we need a universal law so that self-anointed modelists cannot become cultural custodians of regression. And culture in India is allowed to thrive without offending anyone. Art must evoke thought, not provoke anger. It's a higher form of elevation. Brahmananda Sahodra, as our Vedas also say, it's a fundamental expression of bhakti. And we are the repository of a society.
That you won't provoke anger, that you won't do this.
Responsible.
Of course, art can provoke anger.
Right and wrong.
That CBFC will give the certificate to this movie. The movie will get released.
Also an angle of responsible art.
Movie, which is going to touch
art for art's sake has been long argued, but there's also...
Who says that art and films should not provoke anger?
I think the jury is still divided. It should, because it's an issue. Dilip, I really appreciate your time here. Meghna Pant, Tara Deshpande and Mamta Kale. We have really come to the end of this discussion. Of course, you can share your views on ndtv.com. That's all from me. Thanks so much for watching.